Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 125 episodes of mead making, education, information, and entertainment. More than 80 guests have stopped by the Mead House. Professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey specialists have all visited to share their knowledge. The Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a keyholder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. Hey, you can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. And when you get some time, please take the survey located on the website, themeadhouse.com/survey. We'd like to hear from you. The Mead House. Mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss. Hey, you know, fermentation might be the most important part of brewing. So many different variables can be manipulated at this stage to give a wide variety of flavor profiles, color, and transparency. Things like proper yeast oxygenation, temperature control, and carbonation are not possible on entry-level equipment. Spike Brewing has developed 2 distinct product lines that will help elevate your fermentation into the stainless age. Flex fermenter starting at $250 and the conical fermenter starting at $525 brings you into the stainless steel age with ease. Both have all the accessories you need for accurate temperature control, carbonating, racking, and more. Spike Brewing equipment. Check out their online store at spikebrewing.com. Hey, a big thank you to Spike Brewing for their support of the 2019 Iron Bee. Hey guys, and this isn't just for beer brewing, it's also for mead making as well, so get on it. Check them out at spikebrewing.com. Hey, welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode number 129. You can catch the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, including a whole lot of other places. They're all listed on the website. You know where to go, themeadhouse.com. The Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. Talk to us. We're on Facebook and Twitter, both at the Mead House, or you can email us at info@themeadhouse.com. Hey, Jeff and Ryan are both seated at the bar. My name is JD Webb. In this episode, he's a Minnesota native, has 6 Major Cup wins, a Minnesota State Fair Best of Show, and 2 first-round placements in this year's National Homebrew Competition. But wait till you hear this. He's only been making mead for a year and a half. Adam Bystrom joins us at the bar tonight. Hey, in segment 2, from our surveys, hey, this is a quote. I really can't cook. I love hearing about the different flavors. I can't believe we're even gonna do this, guys. Let me start this over. I really can't cook. I love hearing about the different flavors or ideas of flavors or blending flavors. Coffee and chocolate. How to make mead with it. I need to try the cocoa nibs I got from the Iron Bee before I ask my friend for some pure cocoa. I can't believe we're going to do this again. Hey, and then segment 3, Facebook friends, all that and more here at the Mead House. But first, hey, thanks to all of the Mead House key holders who help keep the Mead House podcast free. You too can become a Mead House key holder and help support the show for as little as $2 a month. We've got some great thank you gifts to send to you. Get on over to patreon.com, search for the Mead House, or you can just simply click on the link in the show notes. What are we drinking here tonight? I got this one. It was marked. It had this green. I don't know what to call it. I don't know, Jeff, is this, I know you know what this is. I don't know what color the cap is. We'll just call it green. Greenish gold.
Yeah, kind of a brassish.
Yeah. But the important part says SB, Sam Bravo, on the top. And I understand.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand this is the sour blueberry.
Right. That was the part of the blueberry batch that I had accidentally let the airlock dry out on, so it got a secondary infection in it, and then it turned sour. But I thought the sour actually made it better, so I bottled some up and thought I would send one of those your way too.
You know what, dude? I can drink this. There's a sweetness to it, but it's the sweetness isn't coming from the sugars, or, the honeys and that kind of thing. The sweetness almost tastes like it's coming right from the blueberry itself. I can dig that. And the sour, you're right on point, my friend. I mean, this is absolutely perfect.
It's a shame that's not repeatable at all, since I have no idea what was the actual secondary, species of bacteria that infected that and made it sour. But it's interesting thing that happened and might be worth exploring in the future.
So this is one of those one and done jobs. That's it. Enjoy it while you can.
Happy accident. Yeah.
Happy accident. Yeah. I love it. I dig it, man. I mean, this is great. Me and the sweet stuff just, can't do it. But this I can do. This is really, really nice. In fact, I can drink this for breakfast. Pretty awesome stuff. In my second fist, I'm drinking something special tonight. I'm drinking an Avión Reserva 44. This is an extra añejo tequila, aged for 43 months in oak barrels, and then they take it out of the big oak barrels and put it in what they call petite oak barrels for an extra month. I believe those are probably 5 gallons or less. If you haven't tried Avión 44, this is like a primo tequila. Runs anywhere from 100, let's say $115 to $130 a bag, depending upon where you live. If you can find it. This stuff is outstanding. Would I make a mead out of this? Absolutely. I would absolutely make a tequila mead out of this Avión 44. And let me tell you something. If you're a bourbon drinker, there's no reason why you wouldn't like this Avión 44. So that's what I'm drinking here tonight. Jeff, what did you put in your cup tonight?
So I have, as usual, I'm double fisting it tonight. On the one fist, I have, I poured a little glass of some Hey Jealousy. It's from our friends over at Sap House Meadery. And kind of like the Smoky Pete that we enjoyed so much, this is aged in a liquor barrel. As opposed to Scotch, this one was aged in a gin barrel for 10 months.
Oh, wow.
So got a lot of great, gin character to it. It's very slightly sweet. It very pleasant. In the other hand, I have a bottle from Ryan that was labeled TW, which I understand is for 3 whites. So it's, Ryan, you were telling me it's a blend of 3 white wine Alexanders and to make a piment?
Correct. I think it's, I don't have my book in front of me, but I want to say maybe like Riesling and Gewürztraminer, and I'll have to check. But yeah, 3 different of the white concentrates.
Yeah, it's got a very nice, and it's probably the blend of them that's making it hard for me to put a finger on any particular varietal, but it's got a nice like dry white finish to it. I'm having a little bit of trouble placing the honey just because it is dry, and that's not a bad thing. I like drier meads. But yeah, this is just very crisp, and it's still ridiculously hot today, so this is a really refreshing choice.
Good. Glad you like it.
Awesome. Ridiculously hot. For a couple of weeks ago, we had over 100-degree weather. Now we're back down in the mid-70s. I don't know what's going on. But, hey, Ryan, what did you put in your cup tonight, bud?
All right. So first, I'll tell you what I'm drinking. And I'm drinking a Rogue Farms 19 Original Colonies mead. So this is from Rogue Brewing, in Portland. This is their tradition. Oh, it's not really traditional. It's brewed with jasmine. So it's called 19 Original Colonies mead, brewed with jasmine, and it's just so Rogue Farms, they grow their own hops. And so they said they use the Rogue Farms hop honey. They have hives, 19 colonies or 19 hives out in the hop farm. So it says, hop farm honey, wildflower honey, green tea leaves, jasmine green tea leaves. So it's very good. It's 6.7% ABV. It's very nice. I picked this up when I was in Portland a while back. I don't even know if Rogue still makes this. This might be the last bottle left in existence, but it is. I wouldn't say it's real hot today, but it's a warm day and it's great. It drinks beautifully. Now, why am I drinking this? This is more important. So yesterday afternoon, Adam Bystrom, our guest tonight, drove over to my house and dropped off 4 sample bottles for me to try. A drink on the show tonight, that kind of thing. So he comes over and he explains them to me. He says, I got 4 bottles here for you. All of them are around 5.5%, 6% ABV, and they're all dry to off dry. So right off the bat, this guy knows me. He knows, done his homework on the show. He knows me, what speaks to me, and brings those over. Great. And then I invite him to stay, and we drink a Ryan Braggot. Pretty much an original Ryan Braggot. The only difference is the original Ryan Braggot was made with US 05, and this one was the one that we shared yesterday was made with Omega Hornindal Kvik. So I get a little bit of that yeast essence coming from that one. So anyway, he does in the afternoon, and then in the evening, a buddy comes over, and I said, "Well, I can't 4-fist on the show. Why don't we drink a couple of these? Why don't we try some?" So the first one we opened up was this traditional mead that he made. Now, again, all of these are like 5.5%, 6%. They're all dry to off dry. And we opened up this traditional, and it's just fantastic. It's great. It reminds us a lot of champagne. It's got this like champagne quality to it. Not that it's that carbonated, but just something about it is really, really reminiscent. A lot of the champagnes that I drink are Pinot Noir grape. So, yes, Pinot Noir is a red grape, but the way you can make it white is you press right away. So you ferment it off the skins and you get the white juice essentially. And it had this kind of champagne quality to it. Very delicious. And they said, well, that was good. Let's try something else. So then we opened up this spiced Sizer. And this spiced Sizer was again, just amazing. It had lots of vanilla and lots of cinnamon coming through, but you've got to do that really subtly in a session mead.
Right.
But it was great. It was excellent. Then Andrea came home, and we just kept it rolling, and we opened up this Braggot. And this Braggot that he had was again, very good. I liked it. My buddy Travis liked it. Andrea, also said she really liked it. And then Travis had to go home. He left. And then Andrea and I opened up the last bottle, which was the hopped grapefruit. And this stuff is just phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal. It is grapefruit, and I think dry hopped mead. It kind of, when you smell like an IPA that's made with like grapefruit hops, it's got that, but then it's got the grapefruit juice behind it. It's amazing. Andrea, who even said, I don't like a lot of meat. So this is Andrea speaking. Andrea says that she doesn't like a lot of meats, but she could have had multiple of this grapefruit hop mead, that Adam brought over.
Dude, so you're killing me.
Outstanding stuff, just outstanding. Wow. So again, that's why tonight I'm drinking this Rogue Farms. mead because I drank all the meads last night that I had started to think about. I was drinking that I drank yesterday. Well, anyway, JD kind of said at the top of the show, Adam Weissman's our guest. He is one of the legion of outstanding mead makers here in the Twin Cities area. 6 Major Cups, Best of Show, and a handful of other awards. And he's only been making mead for 18 months. I mean, that's like averaging a Mazer Cup every 3 months that you've been making mead.
Wow.
So that's pretty impressive. I sent Adam home with a cooler of stuff. It's one of the benefits when you do drop-offs at my place. I kind of just walk downstairs and grab what I see and send it home with you. So welcome to the show, Adam, and what's in your cup tonight?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Thanks for that awesome intro. I'm glad I could really make your Monday night work out, Ryan. just kept it rolling. And you filled that cooler up. I brought over 4, and you sent me back home with 9. So thank you. I mean, that was I got to come over more often. But
yeah, me too.
Yeah, I mean, Mead House got a double fist, and so I'm actually having that spice sizer that Ryan was talking a little bit about. I just bottled that on Sunday, and I feel like spiced apple, mead spice sizers are a little bit uninteresting, and I had a bunch of fresh pressed cider from the club by, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try my hand at it. And I'm glad you got like the cinnamon and vanilla. I was really so I added 5 different spices, and I aged that with light American oak. So I actually didn't really want to pick out any single spice, but now that I'm tasting it kind of for the first time out of the bottle, I'm getting the cinnamon and nutmeg and a little bit of that vanilla, but I was really hoping to kind of just what spices are in this, instead of just being like cinnamon. But I'm liking it. I was monkeying with it too long, staring at the carboy too long, so I was like, all right, gotta keg it. And then I'm opening up one of Ryan's, really like drinking something sour. He got a sour braggot, and this thing is killer. It's just beautiful color. Like the carbonation's perfect. It's not too tart. I really like the sour level. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Leafman's. You ever had one of those? It's a fantastic sour beer from Belgium, and yeah, this is great, man. It's half the bottle's gone already, so it's really good.
Excellent. I forgot to mention in Adam's intro, which makes this all the more impressive, possibly. But Adam, again, over those 18 months, has made more than 60 batches of mead and has never once followed a recipe. So
that's impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Okay, so you're drinking your spice sizer. You're drinking my braggot, my sour braggot. Sounds like you're almost done with that. You might get into a third bottle here before we're done. Did you try any of the other ones I sent home with you, or is that the first one you opened?
Yeah, this is the first one. I'm thinking about doing that 14-pound one next. That you labeled 14 pounds. That sounds like pretty good.
All right, excellent. And what'd you think of that Ryan braggot you tried yesterday? Oh man,
yeah, like I was telling you earlier when I was over, I was like, this is just like a little bit of peppery, like orange peel something. I loved it. That was perfect. And then you just labeled it as a braggot, no style or anything. It was wonderful, man.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point that I'll hit on for just a second. The reason I have a really hard time labeling my braggots as styles, so saying like this is and I know on the show sometimes I do it for a frame of reference. Well, I'll say, oh, this is a chocolate milk stout braggot, or this is an amber ale braggot, or something like that. A lot of times I'm really careful about who I say that to, because I have found cases in the past where there have been some really intense beer people, and I said, oh, this is a Belgian double braggot, or this is a Baltic porter braggot, or something like that. And they focus so heavily on the beer style that they lose the forest for the trees, so to speak, in saying, well, it's not technically a Baltic porter. You've got, it's a little too roasty, or it's a little, or not roast, a little too sweet, or, for a double, it's a little light bodied, or it's a little, the color's off. And well, it's not a double. It's not a Baltic porter. It's a braggot, so you can't think of it in the same, you can't like put your BJCP beer hat on and think of this as that same exact style. You've got to understand what I'm talking about here. But anyway, that's I don't know, maybe a public service announcement in who you're talking to. So Adam, and I simply said, he asked like, what style of beer is this based on? And I said, well, it's not. It's not based on a style. And I said, yeah, it's Pilsen malt. It's whatever kind of hops I had in that one, and then I said, this is the yeast and this is the honey, and it's that harmonious marriage of malt and honey coming together here, beer and honey coming together. But enough about me. Enough. I want to focus on you for the next 20 minutes or so here, Adam. You've never followed a recipe. You've had a lot of great success. Why don't we start from the beginning? What got you into mead making, and what inspired you?
Sure. I mean, I've been going. I mean, I think like anybody, a lot of people try their first mead at like the Ren Fest. So I guess that's where I tried it the first time, and it was like kind of just an annual pilgrimage to get drunk on mead. And then when you left the Ren Fest, you wouldn't really think about it till the next time you're there. And but there was this one, it was about 2 years ago. I was at a buddy's house in his backyard, and we were drinking beers, barbecuing yard games or something like that. And for about like an hour or two, there's this band, this like rock band that's playing across the street in somebody's backyard. And it finally got to the point where I was like, all right, guys, this band is wailing. I need to go check out what's going on. They might kick me out, but I got to see this. So I go over to this house, and there's like six dozen people in the backyard, all in lawn chairs, facing an open garage with like a 10-piece band that's like playing a Rolling Stones cover or something like that, and end up having like, there's like this area in the corner that has a bunch of like homebrew set up, and I go over there and start talking to this tall dude with a ponytail, and he hands me a jug, and he's like, you ever had mead? And it was a 1-gallon carboy, and I was like, yeah, Ren Fest, I think what everybody answer would be. He's like, well, try this. And it was just amazing. I just remember it being amazing. And then I stayed there until the band left. Stayed at that like homebrew station drinking his mead until the band left. And then fast forward like probably 8 months or so, I was kind of struggling with my first few batches, and I was like, I got to join a homebrew club. Like, this is getting ridiculous. I need to talk to people like face to face. So I joined the Minnesota Homebrew Association, and I went to the first meeting, which was at a brewery, Alloy Brewing, I think it was. I go there and I open up the door and I got my cooler in hand, people that sample my crappy meats. And right when I open the door, there's this tall dude with the ponytail.
The guy with the ponytail.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I go up to him and I was like, you got a house in St. Louis Park and you had a live rock band? And he's like, yeah. So I introduced myself, and it was Al Boyce.
Oh, no.
So my first homebrew mead was me crashing Al Boyce's rock party. So since then, I just high standards, like whatever I make has got to compare to that first homebrew mead.
You got it. Wow.
Yeah,
that's funny.
So from there, what kind of meads did you start making? What interested you?
Yeah, so like right away I read through Schramm's book, and I was like, so I'd say I don't follow recipes, but that doesn't mean I don't like go buy a recipe like Schramm's and then tweak it to what I want it to be. Like, so I tried my very first one, I read his book and I read that the recipes got on there, and I made a mead and it sucked. And I did a totally different honey than he suggested, a totally different ratio. Like, I was like, I'm going to do it this way. Yeah, I'll do it this way. Yeah, it turned out awful. So, like, my second mead, I was like, all right, I'm going to go big. Like, so I was like, I did a spiced banana Bochet aged on oak. My second mead. Sucked. I was playing with it in a carboy for like a year and a half. It's all right. It's a little burnt tasting, whatever. And so like my next like maybe handful of meads are all standard strength, and just kind of struggling. I'm like, I really want to keep doing this, but I'm not liking it, like really enjoying what I'm producing. So I read about hydromels, I think in Piazza's book or something, or heard it on a podcast, and I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. And since then, like it's been 50 some batches back to back to back with making sessions and learning how to force carb and learning how to do traditional and playing with different types of fruit and spices and oaks. And now I'm doing like acerglins and bouchets and just going from there. I mean, it's just been super active with it too lately. It's like, I mean, I'm looking at like 40 gallons of stuff in process right now and another 90 on my shelves. Like it's kind of, the basement's overwhelming, but yeah, that's where I'm at now. Just the sessions, I'm just loving them.
You did the same thing I did, Adam. When I first started out, following different recipes, everything sucked. It all went down the drain to feed the bugs in the LA sewers here. And, it wasn't until one of our former co-hosts, Aaron Martin, sent me a braggot that he had put together, and I don't even remember what hops he had in it. But, oh, my God. When I had that, I knew that was what I wanted to do. And I've been working on that ever since. And I guess you find what we've talked about this on the show before, too. You've heard us mention it. You brew what you like to drink. You find something that tastes good, and that's what you work on and try to improve it. Is that your take on it?
So I love traditional sessions and playing with what honey can turn into.
Yeah.
So that's what I like to drink. But my favorite stuff to brew, I love pairing spices with fruit and just seeing what kind of combinations you come with. So like a lot of my stuff is either one of those other. So, but lately, and I like off dry or dry. But lately, I've been trying to force myself out of that comfort zone and do more like semi-sweet sessions. So that's where I'm kind of going, maybe Bochet and Acerglin, those I'm looking at, or like mimicking like maybe a Girl Scout cookie or some other, like a truffle or something flavor in like a meat. So like forcing myself to make something that's not off-dry, because there's no way you can make an off-dry like any type of Girl Scout cookie meat. So I mean, like really forcing myself to expand instead of just staying at off dry level. But I have so much stuff that's off dry that I can just drink myself, and I can do that and not feel like I don't have anything to drink. So.
Wow.
So Adam, you approach it a little bit differently, if I'm understanding you correctly. A lot of the home brewers that have been on the show in the past have started from making beer. They start as beer brewers or maybe winemakers, or maybe even a cider maker, and then they kind of found their way to mead, a little bit later. But it sounds like you started with mead and have just kind of settled into mead, which I think is fantastic. I love that mead can be the gateway to getting you in there. 18 months you've been doing this, 6 Mazer Cups. I know a couple of those are golds at least. And, best of show at the Minnesota State Fair, which is like a 700 entry competition, and a couple of first rounds at the National Homebrew Competition. What is your philosophy or your approach when you are putting together meads that you intend to enter into competition?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly intend to enter everything, and I know that early on that was possible, but now it's clearly not possible. But that's what I intend. I intend everything I make to be good enough to where other people enjoy it. Like for me, I've never, like, with every batch I've made, I've never settled. And if that kind of makes sense. Like, I think that spice sizer is a good example. That sat in a carboy, and I would taste it periodically, add spices, pull the spices at oak, maybe add a little bit more honey, different types of honey, until I was like, all right, it's either A, I've monkeyed with it enough, and I'm getting in and out of this thing too much, and I'm drinking too much of it, I got to bottle it. but I still think it's good enough. Or like I haven't settled, and I'm like, all right, this is good enough to bottle. I'm going to enjoy it, and hopefully judges will too. Like, it's just not to settle. I think that's a big one.
Now, has everything you've entered kind of been in that dry range, or are you also? I mean, everything you brought me was dry. Everything I've had of yours has been pretty much dry to off dry. Do you make the spectrum across towards the sweets, or were those what you were finding that you didn't really enjoy, and that's when you kind of took the turn back to dry?
Well, I thought I made something that was semi-sweet, and then the judging sheets got kicked back and said this belongs in the dry category. So yeah, but that, like I said, like I'm really forcing myself out of that comfort zone, and that's not to say like I don't enjoy sweet stuff. I mean, I've got a rack of commercial stuff that's all standard strength, and I would say easily 90% semi-sweet to sweet. Like, that's what I like to buy from like commercial side, but what I like to make for myself is this like sessionable dry stuff. And also, if I'm going to pay shipping, I'm going to get something that's a little higher ABV, and I'll make the cases of the dry sessionable stuff myself.
I like this guy. I like this guy.
So, what ingredients did you? Now, you were at the Iron Bee. You were there. We all met. What ingredients did you take home from the Iron Bee? I know that there were some different opportunities to be able to grab some different things, different grab bags and different prizes. The reason I'm asking is, what, if any, what kind of ingredients or flavorings did you take, and have you started anything yet with those, or anything in planning yet with those?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, everybody got those cocoa nibs. And I played with cocoa nibs a couple times, and every time I put it in just like a carboy and gotten really frustrated with the amount of cocoa nibs I needed and the size of like the carboy entry. So I actually after Iron Bee, I was like, all right, I want to use a bulk of these cocoa nibs and really, really kind of just put a lot of cocoa nibs into a mead. So I was like, all right, let's do a chocolate covered cherry. That seems like, I feel like a lot of people make cherry meads too, but I never have. So I was like, all right, let's do it. And so that's my goal. I want to make that sweet. I did avocado blossom. I think that I fermented on that. But I think I'm going to back sweeten with something that might help that the cocoa nibs kind of like dark chocolate aspect, turn it more like milk chocolatey, if that makes sense. Like obviously I had vanilla, but I think meadow foam might help with that. And then tart cherries. So yeah, that. And then I got a little bit of cranberry blossom and a little bit of blueberry blossom, and I made blueberry lemon mead with orange blossom. And after tasting it, I felt like it was a little bit too like zippy, like too citrus forward. And I knew that I wanted to add a little bit more honey. And I was like, all right, let's do the earthy blueberry. So put that in there, and I think that helped. And that's clearing now, and that's going to be ready to go. But I love that one. That one turned out really good. And the wife loves that one.
Have you ever considered using a hop in trying to tone down, kind of counteract that sweetness a little bit at all, or introduce a little bit of hops into it to kind of change the feel about it a little bit?
Yeah, not the blueberry lemon, like in particular. I did just make a hopped mead after kind of a couple like. Not failed because they ended up turning into something different. Like the hop grapefruit was not intended to be hop grapefruit. That was me playing around with hops in primary that ended up having a lot of citrus flavor. So I had a grapefruit juice, but I still wanted to I wanted to make like a mead that was like on the high end of off dry and bordering semi-sweet, but also have hops. And then after the carbonation, I think it would bring it back down. So you'd have like, it'd be the sweetness there, but it would break it. And I wanted to toy with that, the Kvik yeast, so I grabbed some Boss and fermented that like super hot, like 102, threw in some Equinaut, I think that's how you pronounce it, hops, maybe, and a little bit of Mosaic, and I used acacia blossom, and all of that is very tropical, and it came out like some nice bitterness in it. I back sweetened it to enough where like uncarbonated and no hops, like that would be semi-sweet. But once the hops are in it and it's carb, like it's going to be off dry, and I think it's where I want it to be. A lot of tropical fruit notes in that one.
Good stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Jeff, have you got anything for Adam?
Off the top of my head, no. It is a little bit funny though that your first foray into homebrewed mead was from Al Boyce. It actually strikes me as funny though, just because like of all of the meads that I tasted at Iron B, two of them that really stood out were yours, that grapefruit with the Citra and Simcoe hops, and then Al Boyce's I think it was a hibiscus and rosemary. Those were two that I took away like, oh man, I need to try those. So yeah, it just struck me as kind of an odd parody there that the guy that introduced you to homebrew mead and you are two of the biggest takeaways from me from the Iron B.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, just to be compared to Al, that guy is. Every time that I'm over at his house or see him, like his meads, I'm just like, I gotta try these before anything else. Like I just love them. Like all his meads just have the most amazing aroma and just so full bodied. And I mean, there's so many good meads at the Iron B. Like so many. Oh, yeah. Like Whitey, honestly, probably one of my favorite homebrews is Whitey's Bochet. I think he ages it in rye barrels or rum. It's one of the two, and every time I have it, I'm just like, this is just the best homebrew I've ever had. And I remember he opened it during the Iron B, and I poured some, obviously, and then we sat down while and nobody was drinking it, and I poured a little bit more. And then Josh Holbrook was sitting across from me, and he's like, what is it? I was like, oh, it's Whitey's Bochet. And he's like, it's Whitey's Bochet? So he poured some, and then me and Josh finished the whole bottle. And nobody was drinking it. We're spoiled up here with the quality of stuff people bring to whether it's like an in-house, like at a home meetup or a competition or anything, man. Like there's just good stuff everywhere.
Adam, before we let you go, you've only been doing this for, I think Ryan said 18 months or so. In your experience, is there anything that you would pass on to a mead maker who is just getting started, or even one who is struggling out there that maybe has been making mead for some time? Is there any advice that you might give, or we don't want any trade secrets, mind you, but anything you might pass on to a fellow mead maker out there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the big one is don't settle. Like if your mead is not where you want it to be, stick with it. Do a little bit more research, see what it can be. Like see what it's kind of telling you it wants to be. But one thing that's really helped me lately, and I mean this is huge, is that lately when I went to BeatCon MazerCon this year, Carvin Wilson had this honey table, and he had like over 60 different honeys. Mm-hmm. And I tasted quite a few, like at this point maybe like a couple dozen or so, and I know that every honey has like its unique flavor, and it's just across the spectrum. So one thing I've been really working on lately is like building up my honey library, and I'm almost got like 4 dozen different, and every time like with mead, I always at least taste 1 or 2 of those just to remind myself like what this honey tastes like and what that honey tastes like, and know that whether you're fermenting on it or back sweetening with it, it can always enhance whatever you're going for. You don't always have to go for wildflower or orange blossom or avocado. Those are fantastic honeys, and I've made so many meads that was 100% those honeys. But you start to like add stuff like Western buckwheat, or like I just got this like Hawaiian wildflower, just overripe fruit and mocha. It's a crazy combination. Like there's so much different honey that you can use and toy with, that you can blend with what's readily out there and affordable. I think that's what I would do. Like it's good honey, man. I mean that's the whole point of it.
Yeah, I know Adam was breaking up there just a little bit. He was talking about the different. All the different flavors of honey that are available out there. Try them. Ryan, I think we did an episode a while back. We'll see if we can reference it in the show notes.
Yeah. I wanted to make a couple of points here as we're letting Adam go. Number one, first, Adam, you're welcome to stop by any time with that cooler or a larger cooler if you've got one. And would love to.
Obviously, JD needs to move to Minnesota. I mean, what the hell, you know?
Yeah. The other point, JD, I was going to make is, that's called worker bee. So worker bee honey is here in the Twin Cities. They have a store in the Mall of America, and they have at least a couple dozen honeys for tasting, on pumps. So they kind of like picture. It's a horrible analogy. Hopefully they're not listening. Like those, like a big
we get it.
shampoo bottle or a hand soap bottle. You pump down, a little bit of honey comes out. They've got a couple dozen of those. Yeah. At any given point, and Michael, the proprietor there, I mean, sources honey from all over the world. I mean, he travels the world. He sources honey from the world. I mean, he's got, at any given point, he's got honey from 4 continents and 30 countries, and honey from Tanzania and Israel and Greece and all the different parts of South America and Australia, and so again, if you're in the Twin Cities, Mall of America, you can taste all those. He might not have the quantities of everything you need on hand because he typically sells them in smaller jars, but it's a great place to go to taste and then maybe pick up a little bit for that final bit of back sweetening. If you need there, it's, worker bee honey at the Mall of America. The last thing I was going to say is that we've mentioned it before, but Valkyrie's Horn, the meat competition in September in Minneapolis, Adam has agreed to make a keg of mead that will be on tap for the judges and volunteers, I believe. And last night, Adam and I settled on the fact that keg is going to be of his grapefruit hop mead.
Oh,
so
damn.
make sure that you volunteer with Valkyrie's Horn. You go to valkyrieshorn.com and you can volunteer. You can be a judge, a steward, an assistant cellar master, whatever it is. But when you volunteer at the competition, you're going to have a keg of Adam's grapefruit hot mead, sitting there for judges to wet their whistles. It's
awesome.
It's thirsty work judging a mead competition.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming on, Adam, and I hope to see you real soon, my friend.
Thanks, guys. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
You bet, Adam. Hey, bud, take care, and you're welcome back here anytime. We'll see you.
Have a good one.
Adam Bystrom out of Minnesota. Dude, I mean, this guy, he's only been making mead for like 18 months. He's already been medaling at places like the Mazer Cup, the Minnesota State Fair. I mean, holy cow,
So the last couple of shows, we've had people on. So Adam's been making mead, for 18 months. Yeah. Nathan's been making mead, for
a couple of years,
less than 2 years.
Yeah.
Less than 2 years. I forget. Brett. I don't think he's been making mead that long either. All of these people that are busting onto the scene are like, they've only been making mead for a couple of years, and they're now major players in every major competition.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of that popped into mind as to why all the success these guys are, these wet behind the ear greenbacks are having a ton of success. The first thing that came to mind for me is they haven't been making mead long enough to create any bad habits.
There you go.
There's some truth to that.
Well, and I think they're pushing the envelope. I mean, they're thinking outside the box. They're not doing, it's not like following somebody else's recipe like Adam, referenced in the episode. I mean, he's doing it on his own. He's not a recipe reader. I mean, he, formulates some ideas and goes for it. Hey, if it turns out to be a bad batch, so what? Get on to the next one. And if you make something that you like, chances are that your friends or somebody else that you know or even don't know might like it too. So, you never know. I mean, and I would hope that, with shows like this and several others out there, that people are picking up inspirations. Again, thinking outside the box, not following traditional recipe rules. The acid blend and this much honey and that much water and this yeast and that yeast and whatnot. I mean, rules, the rules in mead making are to be broken. And we've done a number of that right here at the Mead House. But hey, before we get to segment 2, hey, if you made it to the Iron Bee in Minnesota a few weeks ago, you probably noticed a couple of pretty smart-looking ale horns on the prize table. Well, they came from Alehorn, a company that produces fine, handcrafted items from modern barbarians. Alehorn products are made using 100% ethically sourced bovine horn. Their Viking drinking horns and horn tankards have been carefully designed based on input from friends and customers and are beautiful, authentically crafted pieces that are all 100% unique because they come from nature. There's no way that any horn will ever be like any other. Check them out at alehorn.com. And Alehorn, hey, thanks for supporting the Iron Bee. Hey, segment 2, and God, I hate to get into this again. Oh my God, I can't believe we're going to do this. From the oh my God. Oh God, do I really have to read this? All right. So, like making coffee, using coffee and using cocoa nibs. I mean, I really can't cook. I'm hearing about the different flavors and ideas of blending flavors, coffee and chocolate. And they go together. I like a good mocha every once in a while. How to make mead with it, Jeff? I mean, let's start at the beginning.
Well, if you're going to make a coffee and chocolate mead, the first thing I would suggest doing is not making coffee chocolate mead. Here's my thought process. Anybody that's listened to the show for any length of time has heard the infamous coffee mead experiment. So let's, without revisiting that whole debacle, let's just say, hey, making coffee mead is kind of tricky. There are a number of factors to put into it, and I think the next time that I'm going to jump in that foray and do another chocolate mead, I think I'm just going to make a traditional and then let it age on some coffee beans, kind of just cold soak-ish from there, rather than starting with a cold soak coffee or brewed coffee or something like that. Because that seems to be the way that our buddy Ash over at
Sap House.
At Sap House, thank you, has made Amaro Gallo, and I've got this bottle of Higher Grounds from my last mead purchase that it's just kind of like it's sitting there, and I'm like, I know that's going to be great too. I'm kind of holding on to that one just because I know that if I try it, it's going to just scratch that itch, and I'm going to have to make another coffee mead. But yeah, I think if I remember from his talk, he had some different schedules of adding whole and crushed beans at different times. Basically, after like the Krausen space, if not in the secondary. And I think I'm going to take that approach. Just I might do a little bit of rough crush. I might leave them whole. But I'm just going to let them sit on the beans and let the beans, give up that good flavor, and probably, trade them out or pull them out and add more until I get that real coffee flavor that I'm looking for. And I would think if I was going to do a coffee chocolate mead, I'd probably take a similar approach. I'd probably make a coffee mead that is the way I want it to taste, get a good coffee presence, good coffee flavor. Then I'd make a chocolate mead. I'd do a very similar process. In secondary, take some of those cacao nibs and just age them. Let them sit, get a good flavor. I might throw a couple other adjuncts in there, like some vanilla, just something to kind of enhance that coffee flavor, that chocolate flavor. Mm-hmm. Then once I have a coffee mead I'm happy with and a chocolate mead I'm happy with, blend them.
Yeah, my takeaway, Ryan, from this whole coffee thing was that doing anything with coffee, let's start this way. The one thing that I did find out about experimenting with the coffee deal was that don't boil the coffee. Don't use boiled coffee, for one. That introduces quite a bit. Drink a cup of coffee in the morning. If you're a coffee drinker, you'll know what I'm talking about here. There's a level of bitterness that's pretty hard to overcome unless you intend to back sweeten or start out with a sweetened mead to start with. But that being said, I do think that there's a certain amount of sweetness that has to be introduced somewhere, whether it's in the beginning, during fermentation, intentionally leaving some residual sweetness, or back sweetening, after fermentation, to try to go along and complement that coffee. The other thing that I found out is, the dark grains. You might love that dark coffee bean in the morning for breakfast. My experience has been that it really doesn't make all that good a mead. I tend to go for the lighter blends. Sometimes even the lighter, the better, because you want that coffee flavor, not necessarily that roast. And if I wanted to introduce a roast, I would maybe add some, I don't know, roasted barley or something to it. But the coffee thing for me, I went two different ways, and I think you guys had some of the, the one that was more Kahlua-like, very thick, viscous, very high in alcohol. Yeah, it was good enough to, drop a couple of tablespoons in your cup of coffee in the morning, or make a cocktail with, I guess. What do they call it, Ryan? A Black Russian or whatever the hell it is, with Kahlua and cream and whatever else.
White Russian.
White Russian, whatever. Okay.
Or a Caucasian.
Yeah, I'm not a mixed drink guru kind of dude. But and the chocolate thing, the same thing. I've done the chocolate thing here. I put chocolate in porters and stouts and what have you. My whole take on that is, a little bit goes a long way, so you kind of got to be careful with it. It doesn't take very long to extract the chocolate flavors out of cocoa nibs. If they aren't roasted, make sure you roast them first. I think that's where you capture the most flavor out of them. But Ryan, when it comes to coffee and cocoa, here we go again.
Yeah, I kind of want to back up and just make 2 points. Number one, this JD was didn't really get into this, but this is another bit of feedback from the Mead House survey that we're answering here. So Please, click on the show notes or go to the website and fill out the survey. It'll take you like 2 or 3 minutes, and it helps us tailor the show, especially segment 2, to what you want to hear about. So that's what we're doing now. We are talking about what came through in a survey.
Good point.
So please go to the survey. It'll take 2 or 3 minutes, and we will tailor this to make sure that we're answering as many of those survey responses as possible. The second thing is that where this started was this person said that he or she got some cocoa nibs from the Iron Bee. And you did. If you participated in the Iron Bee, you most likely got some cocoa nibs and some other ingredients to play with as well. We want to hear from you. if you, whatever ingredients you took, we had a lot of Amaretti products. We had, everybody got cocoa, from Meridian. Some of our other friends also donated some other ingredients, King Orchards. There was, I'm blanking on it, but there was some tea, bottles of different flavored teas. Mm-hmm. Whatever you make with these ingredients, please let us know. We want to hear about it. We want to talk about it. We want to hear what your experience was and what you made from the hauls that everyone took home from the Iron Bee. So let us know that, please. I know Matt Whitey is working on his bacon chocolate mead from the cocoa nibs and the Amaretti bacon extract that he won. So, I'm excited to hear about that one and taste it, and then what everyone else makes. Okay, so now chocolate and coffee. Chocolate and coffee go together really well. There is a chef that I don't know him personally, but I've seen him do some of his stuff. And when he's making chocolate, he always adds a few teaspoons of freshly brewed coffee to the chocolate because, like vanilla, he says that helps bring out the chocolate flavor. So I get it. I get exactly what you're saying. I'm going to take this in a hard left. I'm going to take a hard left here. There is a style of beer, and I don't think it ever got really popular. It's kind of one of those micro trends in terms of beer that I would make into a braggot, and it's called the white stout. And so a white stout is essentially a beer that is very, very light in color, but has a lot of the characteristics of a stout. And some of the ways that is achieved are non-fermentable sugars, so, things maybe like lactose, and then adding things like coffee beans and cocoa nibs.
Oh, yeah.
So a very common recipe, or I shouldn't say common because it's not a common style, but one way to approach a white stout would be to maybe use something like an Irish stout malt. Irish stout malt is like 2 Lovibond, so very, very light. Or Brees just came out with a blonde oat malt. I think they call it roast oat. It's again very, very light, but provides a really silky mouthfeel. So, and then at various parts, so high krausen or secondary or post fermentation, you add coffee beans and cocoa nibs, and you're trying to get this really roasty, chocolatey, stouty flavor in a very light colored beverage. So I would make that into a stout. A braggot. I'd make this white stout into a braggot. So I would do something maybe like an Ireland stout malt, maybe some flaked oats, maybe some of this malted oat, maybe something like that. Yeah. Fermented out. Adding, I think the best thing you can do is add honey when you're making a braggot at high krausen, just to retain some of the flavor. Maybe add a honey that's got maybe a little bit of smoked malt, just a pinch of smoked malt. And then add a honey that's got a nice robust flavor. Maybe something really, really robust, and maybe even some bochet, some lightly bochet honey in there, or maybe more than that. And then add your cocoa nibs and coffee beans and a vanilla bean and your lactose. Might add the lactose to boil. But really trying to create this stout style of braggot, again, with the chocolate and the coffee just popping out at you. And what you're going to do is you're going to put a cup in front of somebody that looks very, very light in color, and they're going to taste it and go, oh man, I'm getting coffee and chocolate and vanilla and maybe a pinch of smoke and tons of mouthfeel, velvety mouthfeel, and you're going to get that head tilt sideways. And again, I think that's one of the best things you can do. I mean, everybody can nod along. I get it. I get what you're doing here. Cherry mead. I get it. Cherry mead, blackberry mead. But if you're going to turn that head sideways, like, what's going on here? That's kind of a win, you know, I mean, in a good way, yeah. Of course. But yeah, that's the angle that I would take on the next chocolate or coffee mead, especially with the chocolate.
Yeah. You know, some of the coffee meads that I've had, I mean, there's a couple out there that I really like that have come out of some of the professional meaderies. I mean, off the top of my head, we keep talking about Sap House. I mean, that's probably one of the best that I've ever had. But there's a few others out there that we've tasted here at the Mead House that have been quite good. And I mean, the 411 on it is that they used actually very little coffee beans. I mean, it's a very delicate type flavor. It wasn't these meads that we tasted. I mean, they're not an in your face, you know, it's not like drinking a morning cup of coffee. It's something very palatable before dinner, after dinner. And that's the kind of style. I like the one that I did make that was Kahlua-like. That's something that I would, you know, put in an 1.5 or 2 ounce pour for an after dinner thing, or add to my coffee with a little cream. But then there's the one that drinks like a wine almost, like the one from Sap House, you know, for example, that Jeff had mentioned. But I think the whole trick is being very delicate with the coffee beans and knowing when to add them. And again, if you're working a secondary, knowing when to pull them out, man. Jeff, I mean, is that you know, coffee bean? Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't know. I'm trying to equate it to something else, but it's like, okay, you know, you got to be tasting this stuff and know when it's done, right?
Well, and the other thing I should mention, and I should have mentioned earlier, you know, we're talking about using some of that Meridian Cacao nibs from the Iron Bee. You've got a really good source of cacao here. I would say if you're going to make a coffee mead with chocolate in it, take a similar approach to your coffee. There are a number of very high quality coffee shops in basically every major city. Go in there and try some of their light roasts. I would agree with you that the light roast seems to be the real choice for making a coffee mead. And, you know, before I started down this whole coffee mead road, I really didn't care for light roast. I thought it was, you know, just not a lot of flavor, didn't really care for it. But I went in and tried some light roasts at one of these higher quality coffee shops, and by God, you know, a light roast can actually be really, really pleasant. You can still get a full amount of flavor from it. It's just a matter of getting good coffee in the first place. So yeah. I would say, you know, you've got a great source for cocoa. Use a great coffee. Don't just get whatever you can get whole bean from your local supermarket. You know, go try some stuff. See there's so many different flavor notes you can get from the coffee too, depending on, you know, where it's sourced from, the terroir, so to speak. You know, think about that. Go pick out a couple blends you like, and you know, see what you're getting out of those, and try and find something that is going to be pleasant to your palate. I think that's another good thing to think about when you're trying to put together a coffee mead.
Yeah, and I like his, you know, the quote here from the survey. We have no idea who sends in the survey, unless you voluntarily put your email address in it. We have no idea. In this particular one, I have no idea where this came from, but I like what he says. I really can't cook, but I love hearing about different flavors or ideas of flavors or blending flavors. And I mean, that's kind of what it's all about. I mean, you don't have to know how to cook. That's not the deal here. I mean, what it is about is thinking outside the box and being able to combine different flavors and coming up with something that you like, that's tasty, coffee and chocolate. I mean, if you like coffee, put some cocoa in your coffee in the morning. And if you like that, add some honey to it. And if you like that, well, one thing leads to another. So then you're on the road. So that's kind of where.
I mean, you don't need to be a great cook, but go out and try new flavors, try new things, and see what strikes you. I mean, do a little flavor combination of your own, or try weird desserts or ethnic foods and say, oh, well, that flavor is really interesting. What could I do with that? The more you can expand your palate, so to speak, the more inspiration may just strike you out of the blue. I think that's where I found a lot of good ideas, is just trying different things, putting things together. And it's a very fruitful enterprise. So go out and try new things.
Yeah, one of the things, I roast my own cocoa nibs on the stove top in a non-stick kind of a wok-like pan, and I've been threatening to buy some green coffee beans and do the same thing. I've seen it done. I mean, there's plenty of YouTube videos out there, but something that I've wanted to try is roasting my own coffee beans. Just a handful for mead making on my stovetop. So I don't know, guys. I'll keep you advised of what's going on. But Ryan, I know you got something to say here. Go ahead, bud.
I had a neighbor in college who did that. He'd buy green beans, then he'd roast them on his grill.
Yeah.
He had this kind of like cast iron.
Yep.
Almost like a cast iron Dutch oven looking thing, with a long handle on it. He'd put it on his grill and he would roast the beans, and he could kind of tell the temperature they were at just by the sound. It was pretty impressive.
Yep.
The last thing I'll say with this is, if you don't like what it's based on, you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
So if you're not a coffee drinker, you're probably not going to like coffee mead. Good point. If you don't, so think about that. If you don't like bananas, you're probably not going to like a banana mead. So again, the best things you can do are base your recipes off of things that you enjoy. If you're a guy who doesn't like coffee and you don't like bananas, making a coffee banana mead is probably not going to be the thing that you're emptying your keg the fastest. So, again, just think about that, because I know sometimes people get crazy and they might listen to this episode and say, hey, I want to make a coffee mead. Well, what if they're a tea drinker? What if they don't ever drink coffee because they don't like coffee and they drink green tea every morning? So I'll just kind of leave it there.
Well, I know we've mentioned it on the show how many times. Make the mead that you like to drink. Don't make mead that you don't like to drink. Don't make mead that you don't like. Come on. What's the point in that? The other thing I want to say about cocoa nibs, there's a lot of things that go with cocoa nibs too, not just coffee. Cocoa and cinnamon go together. Cocoa and vanilla go together. So there's some different things out there that you can try with cocoa nibs too. Leave the coffee out of it. How about cocoa and hazelnuts, or any kind of nut for that matter?
Well, as Adam was just talking about, he's going to do cocoa and cherries.
Yeah.
Chocolate covered cherries. You could do a chocolate covered banana. You could do the cocoa and banana. Like I said, I told Matt Whitey I'm expecting the cocoa and bacon to turn out really well.
Yeah.
So it's there's lots of options with what to do with that. Lots of options.
Yeah. And Matt Whitey, I know you're listening, but I want a bottle of that when you get it done. So, cocoa nibs and bacon, dig it. All right, guys, moving on. Facebook friends, this is where we try to answer questions with no formal expertise other than what we three have been experiencing in our own brew house, and I'm sorry to say that I didn't do my homework today.
I'll start with one.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you did. 'Cause I've been so busy here. I bought a 50-pound bag of Breese Pilsen malt, Ryan. So I'm sitting here, and thinking about different things I want to do, and I spaced out the Facebook friend. So go ahead, bud.
So William wants to know, is a DME or a dry malt extract starter okay for his mead, and how do we do starters? Now, I know that you had said what we've experienced, but I'm actually going to draw on a past guest. So first of all, sure, you can use DME to make a starter if you want to make a starter. So I'm going to, in a second, I'm going to go back to if you would want to make a starter, but I'm going to just answer the question as it's written first.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make a DME starter. No problem. You can do that. But I'm going to go back to guest Steve Piatz. Steve Piatz, one of the godfathers of mead. Something he told me is, and actually I think he said on the show, when he makes a starter for mead, when he needs to, he makes starters in apple juice.
Oh, there you go.
And he thinks that the apple juice starter works really, really well for his meads. Okay, so that's to answer the question. Now, again, the only issue I'd say to be careful of with DME is if somebody is drinking mead because they are gluten-free or have celiac or something like that. Yeah. Once you use the DME, you are no longer celiac safe or gluten-free in that way. And the apple juice, would help preserve that. So apple juice is a great way to do that. It's a little cheaper and faster and easier than building up a DME starter. But the larger question is starters overall. Mm-hmm. Why do you need them? What are they? What's the purpose? Okay, so the purpose of a starter is to build up a larger yeast cell count, and then you'd pitch that into your must or your wort, and you'd get a healthy, strong fermentation going, and you'd have less potential for contamination or off flavors from the yeast being stressed. This is pretty typical in stronger beers and stronger meads, or at least it sometimes is. Typically, you feel like you get a stir plate. They get kind of like a lab set kind of setup. It looks like like a test tube type situation. Yeah, and you put some tinfoil on that. You put your stir plate, and you kind of whip it up over the course of 24, 48 hours, and you pitch that. I don't use starters typically. I think there's only one or two times in the last couple of years I've ever used a starter. Now, the reason I don't use starters, first of all, I'm not making really, really strong meads. I'm not making meads that are 1200 or something beyond that, or 1150, 1160, something excessively high. Yeah. A lot of the stuff I'm making doesn't require starter. It's not super high. I make a lot of session stuff, like Adam on our show here. So I don't do that. The second thing is sometimes if you look at beer yeast, for example, it'll say you can pitch up to 1060. And if it's beyond 1060, they recommend making a starter. Right. Well, even when I go above 1060, a lot of the times the yeast that I'm using, I want to stress. So because when I stress them, I get a desired additional, desired flavors. Yeah, right. So a lot of Belgian yeasts will produce some really positive esters when they're stressed. The Kveeks are great. I mean, they don't really get stressed all that much, but you can actually draw some more of their flavors out by under pitching them. So you can do that. And then lastly, the last reason I do it is if you wanted to take a streamlined approach to how to not contaminate your batch, you would direct pitch, because the process, especially for people who are maybe beginners or maybe have some sort of restriction on their size or where brewing or making mead or what they're doing, the going from your yeast packet to your starter, then to your fermenter, creates a lot more opportunities for contamination than going just direct pitch. So for those are some reasons to think about not creating a starter. But if you do want to create a starter, good sanitation, you can do it in apple juice. I think is a great way to go, and beyond. But I'm gonna toss it around the table here. Jeff, how do you handle starters, and what is your just general thought on the subject?
So much like you've said, I generally don't do starters. A lot of the time lately, I've been using a good amount of this fake yeast that, like you said, you want to have a little bit of stress going. It produces some additional esters just from having to build up that colony in the must itself rather than in a starter. In the past, when I've done a starter for a very high gravity mead, I've taken a pretty simplistic approach to it. What I did was I followed my the usual rehydration protocol with Go Firm and the yeast. You just you start that before you start mixing your must, and generally by the time I'm done mixing my must, you start to see some bubbles and some froth there. So I'll make that rehydration mixture in a fairly large container, and then let's say generally I'm using about a half a cup of water, give or take, 250 milliliters. I'll probably add maybe a quarter cup of my finished must, and just mix that in, give the yeast something to chew on, let them get going, then maybe do that again or a third time. That's not a starter by any stretch of the imagination. When we're talking about doing starters for beer, these guys are starting the starter for their yeast colony, a day, 2 days in advance, and just really giving it plenty to chew on. This is more acclimatizing the yeast to that must and getting them going, getting them started. I don't really feel the need to go above and beyond my usual 2 grams of dry yeast per gallon pitch rate, or if we're using the liquid yeast, whatever the container size is for that. If you really want to do something like a starter for a mead, another approach you could take, especially if you're using a liquid yeast, whether it's $100 or the Quake from Omega, or the drier sweet Y yeast mead strains. Just get 2 packs. Increase your cell count that way. That's usually all you really need to do.
The one time, it's a great idea. You're right. I mean, if you buy 2 smack packs, or you buy 2 envelopes of yeast, or whatever those are, and you can just pitch it that way. The one time that I did have to do a starter, recently was, you guys remember when Michael Jordan was on our show, and he was talking about all the crazy meads he does, with Jolly Ranchers and root beer and Dr. Pepper and stuff. I was making his Mountain Dew mead, and the Mountain Dew mead, Mountain Dew is probably 97% chemicals and 3% water. Right. And I was, to get that really going, I rehydrated the yeast. So I rehydrated the yeast in, some rehydration nutrient. And then I just very, very slowly added little bits of the must, which was just wildflower honey and Mountain Dew, flat, get Mountain Dew flat, and added that in very, very slowly, and it was fermenting, and then I just kept adding, and it took like a day or so, whatever. Over the course of a day, I kind of built this starter, I'm using air quotes, kind of, with the must until I was like, a pint size maybe, and I was only making like a gallon batch of it, and so I built up the starter to like a pint, and then I pitched that into the gallon just to make sure it took off. But that was the only time I can think of that I've really needed help getting something going. So, I mean, again, unless you're fermenting root beer or Coca-Cola or something, I've never really had a problem with it, of taking off.
The only time
what do you think?
Yeah, the only time I've ever made, and I'll even pitch dry yeast dry. We've had a couple of guests on the show that have no problem doing that either, and have produced with great success. No rehydration, no nothing, just pitch dry right into the must and slam the lid on and be done with it. The only time I really made a starter was when I did the high gravity stuff, working with the 2 port mead style projects that I did. And I equate it to one of those holy shit moments where if you live in northern Minnesota, these guys who don their Speedos in the middle of winter and go out to a frozen lake, carve a hole into it, and jump in. Okay, I'm talking about one of those kind of moments because we're talking.
It's called a polar plunge.
Something like, the polar plunge. Like, holy.
I think it's called a no thanks.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, because I'm dumping yeast into a gravity in excess of 1.165. So probably somewhere around 175 for all I know, because it's off the charts. Looking for that, 19-20%, I'm really pushing the envelope here. So that's the only time when I really made a starter. So that's all I got on that subject. Jeff, you got a couple of Facebook friends, or actually probably Reddit friends. You said you got a really weird one.
Yeah, I've got a really weird one for you guys. This comes from Reddit user Faithless Valor. He says, a barbecue sauce mead. Hi, all. My friend and I are embarking on a quest to brew a mead that resembles a honey barbecue sauce as closely as possible. The thought would be, in the initial fermenter, include smoked honey, brown sugar, molasses, garlic cloves, ginger root, oregano leaf, chili and cayenne peppers, onion, maybe lemon and cinnamon stick. Then after fermentation is complete, back sweetened with apple cider vinegar for tang. Is there anything in this combination that would cause any serious issues other than the overall objective being ridiculous?
Do it and contact us. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Do it and call us.
So I guess question is, what's the purpose of the mead? Is the purpose of the mead to drink, or is it to, use in cooking?
Marinade.
Like Ash, makes the Mirepoix mead. He says that it's, he knows of one person who drinks it, and the rest of the people who buy it, use it in cooking. So I guess my question is it intended to be used for cooking, or is it intended to be used for drinking? If it's intended to be used for drinking, my concern is when he says he wants to add vinegar. You gotta be really, really careful with that, because it could kind of just take over the mead in a couple of different ways. The flavor, and then if there's a mother in it and the mother gets going, the acetic properties in that could could essentially turn the whole thing, into vinegar. So I think that if you're using it for cooking, it's probably even less of an issue because, it'd be great to tenderize a piece of meat or
sure.
Whatever you want to do with it.
Sounds like a hell of a Meridian.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing to think about is you want to contrast when you're cooking. You drink a hoppy beer, a bitter beer to cut, the sweetness of what you're eating, or you drink a white wine that may be fruity to go against maybe the fishiness, a nice piece of salmon or halibut or something. So, the last thing I want to do is eat a cheeseburger and drink a cheeseburger flavored mead. I want something that's going to complement it. And the best way to complement it is to have it, in delicate opposition. So, across the flavor wheel, if you're eating something sweet, you want to drink something a little more bitter. You're eating something herbal, you might want to drink something more fruity. That is kind of this delicate tango across your palate. And so again, think about that. If it's okay that there's no barbecue flavored meads because there's a lot of beverages that go really well with barbecue, complement it well. To what JD said, yeah, I would love for him to try to pull this off and then hear about it and have him write us or something. But that's, I'll go ahead, JD.
Well, the one thing about the vinegar, okay, don't put the vinegar in the must, okay, save that for later. All right, once you get your mead made with all these flavors, then add the vinegar. I might even throw in a little tomato juice at the same time. I see where he's going with the vinegar. If you've ever been to the South, North Carolina, that's, vinegar-based barbecue sauce. Dude, I would absolutely marinate a pork roast in this guy's recipe. So, if we can get a message to him and say, hey, do it, and contact us when it's done, I want to hear more about it, Jeff.
Sure, I'll drop him a line. Yeah, and as a longtime Kansas City resident, I can firmly say that the vinegar-based barbecue is wrong, and it's not the way you do barbecue sauce. That doesn't mean he shouldn't try it. Yeah. I do think there's a level of risk even in back sweetening with the vinegar, because like Ryan said, there's an Acetobacter mother in play, and like any the rare wine collectors that worry that their prized vintage has turned to vinegar, that's how that happens. You get a little bit of Acetobacter contamination in there, and give it time and let it sit unattended. You've got a very expensive barbecue mead vinegar instead of a barbecue mead that has some apple cider vinegar flavor. Maybe I don't know, maybe heat that apple cider vinegar up to 160 for 10, 20 minutes before you dump it in there. That way you hopefully kill most of the microflora that might still be living in it. That would theoretically work. I know that's pretty close to the USDA standard for low temperature homogenation of milk. So I would think that would work for bacteria as well in a vinegar base. It's a little bit tricky. I would also go easy on the onion and garlic, and maybe instead of including those in the must, have those in your boil water beforehand. Pull those out. That way you don't have anything vegetal sitting on there and throwing odd flavors in as the yeast chews on it and it sits for an extended period of time. But no, I'm wholeheartedly for it. This is a really interesting project. It's part of why it caught my eye.
And roast them first. Roast your vegetables first before you put it in your mix. Hey, Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. We're going to leave it right there. I think we just started a barbecue sauce war on our Facebook page. Hey, I'm digging this sour blueberry, Jeff. I'm telling you, I could drink this stuff for breakfast. This is really an outstanding meat. I really like this, and I wish you could duplicate it again. But
yeah,
I know this is a
I may have to try some different bacteria strains and see if I can get something similar going on, because it's just a really refreshing, really complex, flavorful meat. I really enjoyed it.
You bet. And hey, I hear that music playing. Hey, special thanks to our guest today, home mead maker Adam Bystrom, for stopping by. But hey, in the meantime, happy mead making. And I think I got it figured out what you two have been up to. Are we having some kind of a neighborhood luau? If so, I'd like to hear from our listeners on what kind of mead would you serve at a luau. Send us a note, a recipe, info@themeadhouse.com. We'll put it in the show notes and bring you on board to the show and talk about it. But hey, that's it for this episode. Hey, Ryan, blow out the oil lamps. Jeff, slam that kitchen door shut. Hey, we'll be back next week with episode number 130 of The Mead House. We're gone.